Oh, listen to that little bit of a track coming in as well. I appreciate that choice in sound design. Zooming on through down the mid lane, it is a Death Star run of sorts as we go swooping down the various sites and scenes.
You worry about the champions, I'll worry about the towers.
That was so on point. I cannot begin. There we go. Still, no Vader in his TIE fighter to come and cause us some trouble this time around, but we have got a stars in the stars, literally, because Astralis over on that left-hand side alongside MNM.
You know as well as I do, is a TIE advanced, not a TIE fighter. Very
I do, in fact, know that. That's fair. I apologize for letting you down on my Star Wars lore there.
Yep, it is still a tachyon ion engine. That's what it is.
The fact that I'd actually forgotten that's what the TIE fighter / TIE general engines are. They make cool noises.
I remember doing some stuff about tachyons in a physics degree. Can't tell you what they do. They're a particle of some kind, but...
They're the ones that travel through time.
Well, look. Well, everything travels through time in some sense.
These will travel
really
backwards through time.
About it.
Was that
traveling through river, which is actually slightly more tangible than the human construct, which is time, is MNM's bot lane and Cassiopeia. And of course, the Cassiopeia, very interesting pick too, because I look at a lot of champions which can get on top of that Cassiopeia, but if you ever miss that mark and you get miasmad, someone like that Leona is going to have a really hard time. That mid-jungle duo, if they're stuck on that miasma and they get ulted into it, that is so rough. I think effectively what Soft is here to do in the early games, just to make sure that Camera isn't going to get absolutely piled on in the mid lane. And hopefully Shredder can help in that regard too, as Nautilus, one of the premier roaming supports. With that early pressure, any carry of that Draven, because you're already taking control of the wave.
And honestly, you know, we've already seen a few dive-heavy comps with, I don't know, a lack of really unavoidable engage, sometimes getting a little punished when they try to go for the dives. I'm reminded of Bifrost game where they were really struggling to get through all the slows and fields of danger to get onto key carries earlier on in the day. And of course, see whether Taxa and the rest can manage it as this game goes on, as a little bit of trading going on early here in the bot lane, but nothing, of course, too crazy right now.
Yeah, and now, a lot of things to touch on as well, because we talked about the Cassiopeia. I mean, MNM going for a very different kind of draft. Of course, the Wukong in the top lane too, something that Archram called out because that happened in Div 2, in terms of the Wukong in the top lane. Of course, still going to be a big team fight menace. So MNM playing around, stuff a little bit away from the accepted norm of what's happening in solo lanes. Really interested to see what they do with this level 3 wave crash dive on bot side though, because Shredder, has struggled a little bit in Div 1, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen
awkward games, but now they have that wave crash dive. Shredder has a chance to make something happen on the map. Astralis ping it out, but what they're doing is just hiding in fog of war right now and looking to get some vision down to track that jungle path of Taxa potentially.
And honestly, MNM fall into a similar category for Nariki to me, in the fact they look better than their 3-10 record. We have seen so many half-good games, and by that I mean literally half the game has been played so well and the other half has been a bit of a disaster. It's been so frustrating to watch.
Sometimes the middle half.
Yeah, and it is incredibly
25% at the beginning and the end, which is rough.
And you can see the talent on this team, but it's almost, of course, with the way that this roster shifted, particularly coming into summer, it kind of feels like if this had been the team in spring, and then they come into summer, we might have seen that kind of trajectory be really good for this split. But unfortunately, they've come in and it's been a tale of what could have been rather than what has been.
That's kind of along similar lines to a team like Singularity as well, particularly in their case because they were meant to be a development roster, but not to harp too much on about them. But you know, MNM, it is just about the case of development too, because these players are trying to develop beyond their current state, and they do need to do that at a pretty fast rate now because they're at 3-10. Even if they won this game, they would be a game behind Nariki. We were saying, after Nariki beat Singularity, it's like, oh, you know, they took this win and they get ahead of MNM, but MNM still have to face Singularity. Maybe it's a strength of schedule thing. Maybe it's just an artificial little bump that'll even out towards the end of the split and they'll be on a similar game score. Well, now Singularity took a win. They actually look fairly strong today in some regards. Not in all of them, but of course many of our teams are prone to making a mistake or two. And Nariki just beat the #1 placed team. And they, you know, as Dan said on the post-game interview, they just played well today. And MNM now can't take any excuses. They have to not just play well, but close out the game in the way that Nariki did today if they want to start escaping that relegation bracket, which they were clear of most of the split.
And now it's getting a little bit dicier again, and it's been a day of upsets, let's be frank. We've seen 3 out of our 4 games really go against the common convention of what was expected. Perhaps most dramatically, of course, XL just losing. We saw that one was pretty extreme. Riddle, of course, fell as well. And it leaves us with a question about whether MNM can do the same. And, of course, they've come so close before. I won't say they've done it until they've got the Nexus.
Also, the other upset victory of Nightmare's Ari build winning against Common Convention.
Well, Singularity bidding Bifrost, well, right at the beginning of the day was pretty damn extraordinary.
Glad we got ourselves some good games today. It's always very fun. You know, we were talking about Cassiopeia needing to spin a half from Lee Sin.
Flash, Thundering Smash, Abduct, and Abscond, and it's still not going to be quite enough, actually. Flash for Flash, now Softs into the mid lane. Go try and get into Senkux, who takes a bit of a chunk, but won't quite fall down. And Astralis, remember, have often required their mid laner in recent weeks to be a large part of their playmaking. Is Kiba now in a spot of bother? Sky Splitter comes down, they'll land the Zenith Blade, but a W out will allow us to turn around. That's the Petrifying Gate, but Shredder gets shredded, staying alive right now, but not enough. A Riptide alone will not be enough to save you.
And that was a real mess. It felt like MNM. Initially, again, we kind of talked about the Lee Sin kind of being here in part to make sure that the Cassiopeia doesn't get piled on. Isn't actually there in time. Chimera has to burn a lot of HP and, of course, resources available to him to stay alive. Then they try and overstay a little bit. They think, okay, well, Lee Sin's here now. Maybe we can work around that. But both supports enter the fray, and it's not like Volibear is a slouch in the mid-jungle 2v2. In fact, he is anything but that. And it does really just feel like MNM overestimated themselves as soon as Soft turns up, maybe feeling the onus of having to do something with a Lee Sin. Lee Sin really does fall off, even more so than a champion that also falls off like a Volibear. At least Volibear has slightly more applications currently in team fighting in mid and late game. It used to be the case that Lee Sin always useful for his kick, and he kind of is. But it does feel, actually, the more now that I watch this champion, when you get to Lee Sin to the late game, a lot of those kicks mean a lot less than you think. They look flashy, but they don't achieve that much. Whereas the Volibear genuinely does get on top of their target, keeps them pinned in place. He does that reliably too.
And the floor to execute is just that much lower, right? Like, if for Volibear, Flash Q is relatively simple to pull off. Pulling an R over a wall, not that mechanically strenuous. Whereas Lee Sin, you're often required to make some pretty extravagant plays, and you do have the capability to do them, but it's hard, and unless your name is someone like Ona, who is truly extraordinary on the champion, right, and it seems to be able to make those plays that Lee Sin was notorious for across those years, but just on another level that is often required now with the skill of players in League of Legends as it stands, does make things pretty difficult. Of course, Camera burnt the Flash early on, is having to be a little bit wary about where his wave is right now, and it's not in the best position for him.
Yeah, and this is something that Senkux has been doing very well in regards to NLC mids anyway. It seems like he's uniquely been good at... So this is something which I guess we kind of, between us two actually, we always refer to it as like the Aurelia lane positioning, because this always used to happen. Because you just hold the wave there, they have to walk up, and then they have to just die.
They throw down the miasma, but there is no saving that snake straight into a pair of boots.
Once again, MNM not there in time. Shredder, Mishku, Soft now here for three-person turn around, but they don't hit that Q.
Wukong's around, and actually, having burnt a fair amount there, they're not actually going to be able to contest this Herald especially easily, actually, do I think, Astralis. So they might end up being kill for Herald trade.
Well, see if... Well, I mean, Carlson does have Mega right now, and he has Flash. That always gives them an option. You don't have Volibear ult. That's a big tool to be taken away. It's not like they have everything out of stock. Either way, they don't find themselves the positioning, and not actually looking to just crash that wave top instead. MNM going to walk away with the Herald at least, which they will need to start trying to even up this gold again.
Indeed, and of course...
Oh no, are they just going to...
Oh, Camera, it's just a complete...
There's no teleports. Gonna have to wait for Shredder to be there in time. Wave is crashing already, pulling the wave. Camera's doing the same though.
Doing a fair amount of damage on the Crispo, trying to trade this out best he can. He's got Conqueror stacked. Crispo hopping forward, burns the heal. And he really wants to be involved in this kill. But it's a 4 versus 1, and there is nothing to be done for Camera.
It is, you know, we mentioned this a little bit in regards to Singularity earlier in the way they played their early game. Of course, they ended up winning that game, but there were still some issues we were talking about. Look, they're making kind of like the right plays. They know they need to be, in that case, it was bot lane, and in this case, too, it is. They were making the right decision, but they were a couple of seconds off. They weren't actually there for when the hammer blow fell, and in that time, again, you can see Shredder is heading down towards bot lane. If he's there for a hook under turret, sure, that's actually fine. You don't have the Volibear ult off cooldown to really force the dive, and that's probably Chimera surviving. But Astralis win out on the timing battle. MNM are not there in time again for maybe the third or fourth time this game, including the plays mid lane, and they are suffering for it.
And we saw Astralis falter when their early game didn't work out on Monday. This time it seems to be straight back to what's been working for them, which is making these early plays and doing it pretty cleanly. They're back to punish the snake again. Clearly a hatred of reptiles in this one. Taxa over the wall. Soft's going to be around, so is Shredder, so they might be here in time. Debating it and decide against going for the dive this time. I think the vision of Shredder makes them go against that potential play.
And see that the flash was there on Kiba. He actually soaked up enough XP to get himself a solar flare. Chimera's flash just up now. Makes it much harder to land that play. And again, remember, if you don't land that CC onto the Cassiopeia, that's when things get really, really difficult.
Ace check. Oh, that's going to be the turn in. Soft will ward hop away, but Shredder now left out to dry. Hooks himself away, but in they go with the Stormbringer. Taxa flashes after the flash from Shredder, and now Soft is in danger. But he's not going to get too much more done. The kick doesn't get as much down as they want. A topside. Caleb going very, very low, and Carlson needs to find one more boulder, one more auto, and that's a dead monkey. Hop forward into the Cyclone. Can't quite secure the kill, though.
Close run stuff. Caleb just about healing up enough with pots ticking. Saw that earlier in the day from an on under tower. This time it's a Wukong. Caleb gets away with it. I was actually wondering if a flash auto from Carlson would have been enough, but maybe CC from that Cyclone would have been the end of it. But I mean, Astralis found a bit of a cheat code to dealing with the Cassiopeia. Ooh, what happens if you don't catch me when we dive onto you? Don't dive onto the Cassiopeia. Dive onto someone else when the Cassiopeia is out of range to affect those plays. So MNM get caught off around the fringes, and Astralis, I've been really liking the way that they have played around their mid-jungle and support. You saw it versus Singularity when they absolutely put a poor Oriana into the dirt. 1 and 8 was Mirza at the end of that one game. And yeah, they ended up flubbing some side lane plays after that point. Hopefully Astralis won't be revisiting that kind of eventuality again. But once again, we can see that they are really, really good at making sure enemy mid laners need to be playing respectfully. And then their teammates need to be there playing respectfully too. You are not allowed to snooze as mid jungle when your mid lane is being put under this much pressure. And luckily in this case, MNM managed to just about salvage enough to keep Chimera in lane after the many attempts on his life. But it still put Senkux and crew into a very good position.
Indeed it has, and of course they are the recipients of a lot of this early gold, but MNM with the Herald, with the 2 early Drakes, have certainly managed to get at least something back in their name, and they do have a Draven who's picked up a few stacks at this point, but will need to cash them in at some point, and that Adoration is going to go to waste. If they can cash that in, if they can make the Herald play work, and they're running a little out of time, and in fact Soft needs to drop it now, or it's pretty much gone, actually.
Getting close.
There it is.
Actually just been used there. It feels like they have to do so, but of course Astralis will have been timing that too. They call down their jungler in time. Can they actually force them off the Herald?
Yeah, it's done.
Don't even get it to charge up its charge. MNM would love to have that to even up some of their gold score because of those laning advantages, those skirmishing advantage, which has Astralis managed to build up already, but they don't manage to do that through that Herald. They have to lick their wounds and walk away.
Carlson trades in onto Caleb, doing a bit of a chunk as the, I'm not sure, what was it? Is it the Underworld Wukong with that slightly echoey laugh there? Some interesting VFX transformations on that one.
I actually really like the Underworld skin line.
It's some really cool stuff.
It's got some really cool stuff. I don't believe Gatekeeper Galio is part of it.
It looks like it should be.
It looks like it should be. Maybe it is. I'm actually not sure. I'm not great at telling you which part. See,
if
there was a pop quiz on like skin lore, that would be a bit
Don't give
shaky.
Shakarus ideas.
Then again, I'm not going to lie. I think most people will be quite shaky on that at this point. I can tell you about Star Guardian.
Can you? But across all of League of Legends or Wild Rift and Legends of Runeterra? There's some extra ones in there?
There's Oriana in there too now for Wild Rift.
Gwen's in Legend of Runeterra. Soph is in danger in the jungle though. We might have to talk about that one as Camera is going to be around here. They're going to try and jump onto the snake who's going to get flash Zenith bladed. Kiba, what a gorgeous little turnaround as they were trying to be pinched in the jungle. But MNM are punished in turn.
Oh, Astralis go once again onto that Cassiopeia. Okay. Chimera very much out of position in this instance. I feel like some of the others kind of forgive him for. This one was, you had flash, didn't have a stopwatch. At least they didn't blow that flash. I think if you don't have flash, you basically can't lane in this game. Someone is going to come hunt you down. It does feel like MNM just not quite in position in regards to supporting that Cassiopeia, who needs so much help to function in this game. The way I like to... Actually, we'll see if a skirmish starts up here, because...
Herald number 2, yes.
Spawned. Let's just check and see if any action explodes here.
Kraken Slayer in for Mishigu. Remember, he's still not cashed in. If he dies, a lot of what you have grappled goes away.
About this. A couple of people have. I believe it was actually Venza that was talking about this one. And gives you a lot of ability to just keep churning through those axes. So, second Herald going to MNM. Maybe they'll get a chance to use this one. That'd be nice.
Carlson is a little shoved up here, but MNM will decide not to go any further, and they've just crashed the wave, as you said, and they'll back out from that one now.
And the thing is, a lot of the time when top laners do die at a side lane, it is because, like, well, I gotta crash this wave, otherwise I don't get access to 3 waves, and that's arguably worse than getting a kill.
That's more. I lose more gold from not dying.
Yeah, and it's the sad state of a top laner, where you sometimes realize that your own life is actually worse than...
I am worth less than this minion wave, it's time.
And of course that ends up flowing into a lot of things across the map when you're sat there going, well, you know, if the wave isn't in XYZ position, then we can't actually fight around these various things on the map, which we are setting up for. Yeah. But Carlson, you know what, actually, let's spend a little bit of time on that, because Carlson in spring came in obviously a very young player.
Indeed.
And was often put onto Renekton set, playing lane-dominant champions, and sat there getting resources from his team and doing well in a 1v1, but actually when he was on the weak side, when he wasn't really being focused on, kind of suffered. Of course, that game versus Riddle, second round robin of Spring Split, it was against Kekt, who played Renekton into his set and sent him 0 and 5 and a great amount of CS down because he didn't really know how to deal with that situation at the time. He's grown a lot since then. Yeah. I think Carlson has been a real credit to his team, and it's good to celebrate our players, particularly when they are developing, because the ERLs is a great place for development. What's he going to do here, though? Not on the scene of the crime for mid lane. That Herald is going to get used, and it's going to get used mid lane.
This one is a success, and MNM are on the board with the turret. Mid lane turret nicely secured. It will come in trade for that top lane tier 1, which will go down to Carlson's building up. That's the way I'm looking to phrase that. The Mega Gnar. Dragon about to spawn, he'll TP in with 2/3 of that bar available to them, but MNM looking like they want to fight this as well.
So Carlson's not going to have that recent gold, he's immediately hooked.
Ooh, the turnaround to the Cyclone, they're going to try and get the kill, but nothing is down. The Petrifying Game doesn't get as much down as they want to. What can they get out, though, with those Twin Fangs firing? Mega Gnar to the wall from Carlson, though, but Michigu's already cashed in. That's a disaster. Already they've got through, but look at the side, Senkux doing his best, he's got a double. Shredder falls, Michigu alive. Hop forwards from Crispberg, gets that one, and while they cash in, Astralis are still the ones on top.
You know what, for a second, I dared to believe, but the stars of Astralis burn bright just enough, at least this time, to win out on that confrontation. Michigu was free hitting for a lot of that, did have items, did cash in, but just wasn't enough. I felt like as soon as Carlson TP'd in, he thought, oh, well, actually, you know, he hadn't used that gold. He's not going to use a great Mega Gnar at this point, but Senkux just gets into where he needs to be. I mean, Cabrera has to flash out immediately, and it feels like it is just a fighting retreat. You know, as Carlson finally gets back into that play, and Senkux hasn't been shut down. This SARS continuing to use their mobility, using their ability to stack up that Conqueror, and at that point, DPS check is just won by the bigger wallets of Astralis.
That said, at least Michigu did cash in, so it's not all doom and gloom, just mostly doom and gloom. There's that second item complete to keep him at least somewhat with parity with Crispberg.
But even after that fight, you get that cash in, you're still down a lot of gold.
Yeah.
At this point, you're down. You didn't even get Soul Point. If you get Soul Point from that, I think you're feeling, you take it as a consolation prize. It's still pretty bad for you in terms of not being able to control the map, giving up too much gold, whatever. Michigu's probably going to die here too.
Oh, he's in so much danger. That's a decent stand aside, but the True Shot barrage afterwards and the CC chain is absolutely eternal. Eternal left to send him straight into Eternal Afterlife.
You know, when this happened against Singularity, I was like, oh no, it's just mid lane is dying all the time. It turns out just playing mid lane versus Astralis, it doesn't actually matter if you are a mid laner. Just
who is standing
in that lane is just a bad idea. It is their territory. They play so well around this area of the map, and setting it up with various roams to it. It's not like they're losing anything across the map. Astralis just very good at punishing people who walk up too far there.
Kerem's like, yeah, that's right. You get out of here. I'll order you once. And Kiba goes, okay. Blast comes his way out towards the river. And the rest of Astralis coming to try and get vengeance for that attempted punch. This is bullying all over again. Back alley brawls about to come through his Crispberg.
It's funny you mentioned that. The last time this happened too, I mentioned the fact that the mid lane was kind of like, because it had to be just emptied, MNM, it's kind of like the empty lot made famous in one of our favorite video games, the Yakuza series.
Absolutely.
And it does feel like an absolute gang brawl here, as Astralis willing to really go toe-to-toe and just throw punches left and right.
Senkux, Dragon of the Danes, stepping up here. takes that jacket off and ready to
Never
brawl.
played this game series. Get ready for a lot of nonsense happening in the next couple of minutes.
I've avoided making Majima references so far. Maybe you're unleashing me here. But for now, instead, we'll look to see how this game plays out. Because honestly, it's been pretty controlled from Astralis. Outside of that fight, we got a little bit dicey. Everything else has been Astralis making plays and largely making them succeed.
Yeah, and it does feel like when Sencux is involved with those plays, it has been a winning play. I really think Sencux has such a glow-up from Spring.
Oh, hugely so. I mean, honestly, so many of our mid laners have. Like, Sencux is right up there, Backland's right up there.
It's kind of important, actually, because I think back to Spring, and I think, okay, who were the mid laners that really impressed? It effectively was MNS and Tempt. Then you had a couple other players who had their name in there. But to the level of Summer, I don't think that was the case.
No,
I do think that it has been a much less dominant mid lane split in terms of, you know, MNS and Tempt not just running away with every game. And I think that does send testament to a lot of the laners which have stood up and be counted for in various different roles. They've been playing a lot of different things. Of course, Backland on the more aggressive champions, a lot of the AP assassins and other things from it. Of course, the Yasuo too being a huge thing.
Ooh,
and,
yes.
Now he's also now my obviously honorary favorite player in the NLC after doing the doing the Ari build he did earlier. Again, the
Bias
crazy,
is coming straight through.
Crazy damage one-shot scenario earlier in the day. But then you look at a player like Sencux as well. He's done it on various different champions, and the Sile has been first and foremost amongst them. He has been such a core member for the team as well.
He's going to try and CC his way out, but he's got a blast going. That throws Caleb into an awkward spot, but he does have a warrior trickster to slip over the wall and out of danger. Baron is, of course, alive, but it's still only 21 and a bit minutes into the game, so it's probably a little early for teams to be seriously considering until a second item comes through. But
the game is starting to slow down, and I will say, again, last time that we saw Astralis kind of slide into this sort of game pattern, they started trying to play around side lanes and got caught a little bit napping when they were trying to, or at least caught a bit lax, I suppose, in side lanes when they were making aggressive plays. They didn't have all their ducks in a row, and they got swatted down. They managed to finish off that game, but that was a real pain point for them. So Astralis slowing down the game, content to play on multiple lanes, but not make big dive, big fight plays on those lanes, rather taking over a lot of jungle camps. It's slowly ticking up the gold in their favor, and it's an uncontested lead, right? Because you're taking those jungle camps, you're not really giving up anything for it because you have your own jungle camps in turn. And that has meant that that tick up of gold is going very much in favor of the Astralis team.
Also want to shout out here a little bit while we have this moment to talk about Taxa, right? A player who we honestly had a lot of criticism for in Spring. We were kind of unimpressed with his lack of proactivity early. And
it's kind of funny how we've mentioned that about several Astralis members.
I know, but it was so true. There's been massive glow, because remember, this was a team that missed playoffs by a heavy margin in Spring, who were, after the first few weeks, feeling like almost unable to find wins. And then, of course, in summer, they've come in and they've been one of our top contenders. Of course, they've not really been able to hit the top two, which I'm sure they were looking for, but the improvement has absolutely been there. It's just against some of those teams which have been able to contest them mechanically early. It's got a bit difficult. Yeah.
Wondering what was going to happen there.
Oh, definitely something to be concerned about. As actually, he does go straight in, so worthy of consideration. Soft just dies at teleporting in on this, but it'll be a return in trade. Shredder went to look for a potential play, and instead, it's looking like an absolute disaster. How the hell did Camera get there? They get the shutdown. There's a Cyclone after, but I just don't know what there is to do. The Petrifying Gaze comes through, and they're going to get knocked up, and there's just not enough damage. Dodges the Abscondum Dunk, but a stopwatch keeps them alive, and MNM have gone in and been roasted over their own fire. Marshmallows melt in the enemy jungle.
That's the caramelized climate change we were talking about. It's getting a bit stuffy in here as those marshmallows start getting a little bit burned. Mishku wasn't even at that play. Camera really going deep, trying to find that angle. Flashed over after teleporting in, but just couldn't find their mark. And Astralis, once again, finding their own big play. This time it was handed to them. They weren't really the architects of that play, but more than happy to play Demolition on MNM's attempt.
Oh boy, Marshmallows on a silver platter, and then you kind of start us mid-narrative here to say, oh, maybe they go for something, and they really did.
Yeah, I was kind of worried that Soft would get caught out. I didn't think you would actually go in.
Oh yes.
The amount of damage Chrisberg has is pretty hilarious at this point. Now, again, I think this is actually not an awful angle. I think once you committed to that TP, you kind of know you're in the thick of it. You need to kind of play a fighting retreat, and he does fairly well in regards to the amount of gold he has, but you only have that much amount of resources. You have been shut down well, and truly very thorough attempt by Astralis to deal with that. And yeah, once again, it feels like Mishigu, as he has so often been, sad for the guy, looking on in horror as the rest of his team starts to go for ill-advised plays, which he can't really take any part in.
Unfortunately for them, Camera was about one Twin Fang away from claiming Senkuk's bounty as well, but couldn't quite make it happen.
It wasn't for those meddling kids, and also a stopwatch.
And also a stopwatch, indeed. Being able to stop time is, generally speaking, quite a powerful power.
It is just a human construct. We can go and have a philosophical physics debate if you'd like. We can have that.
We did kind of briefly touch on that one. I don't know whether we're going to have all that much time, of course, as Kiba might be in a spot of bother here. He's going to face check Shredder. I don't know whether they've got the damage on camera coming over all the while that top lane inhibitor is under siege. Solar Flare comes through, and that top lane inhibitor turret falls, and MNM just feel like they lack the damage to even kill a support right now. They're going to hook on attacks out. I don't know whether they want that.
No, pretty sure they don't. Carlson on the flank, and MNM once again having to get forced back. They're having to keep distance away from Astralis. And sadly, they don't have themselves a giant old James Webb Space Telescope to keep themselves in sight of these stars as they continue to up the ante, keep on getting their own leads, and they're now here in force around this mid lane. MNM looking for the flank.
Well, the stars have certainly been shifting blue this game, as has the gold. Taxa gets jumped on, but Kalem already taken to nearly no HP. Soft goes to the backline and straight into the grave. He follows swiftly after. Kemmerer will scream, but it's only in pain as he falls as well. A double for Chrisberg. And MNM once again fall flat.
On the core of this MNM composition, this mid-jungle just did not get firing off. They didn't manage to get to that helium burst of solar flare-ishness. That's all belonging to Astralis. They've just burned out of MNM, and they are sat here just falling apart as Astralis have done what they have shown to be so powerful for them in this year, and that is tear apart this mid part of the map.
And it's a little bit ironic, probably, that the snake that cannot buy boots has been made into them more times than I can count at this point.
Gosh.
Probably a little cruel, but 1-6, it's been a very rough game for the Cassiopeia.
I will stress, this is a strength of Astralis.
Oh, completely.
Now, I do think that MNM didn't do enough to protect the Cassiopeia, who you know is going to be forced onto at some point, but this is also something that Astralis do uniquely well within the NLC. And you see Soft trying to make those late game plays, but this is why Lee Sin is not really reliable in the late game anymore. It does feel like getting to your targets is such an ordeal, and Astralis more than happy to keep their battle lines. They haven't died on their mid-jungle, and they fought so much around them. You would have thought maybe one overstep, maybe something like that, but no, they've just been that much further ahead than MNM, that much quicker to the outplay.
Yeah, well, there's an infinity edge in for Michigu, but unfortunately for Astralis have got beyond that, and there's no Buzz Lightyear on the other team right now. 17-3. They've got 2 of those Drakes, a third spawning in 20 seconds. They've got the Baron, and there's just nowhere to go right now.
It feels like this could be the very last fight. Senkuk's making his way over, and how terrifying is that Silas, this player in this league. MNM really, really would have loved this win to keep themselves at least within that one game of Nariki, keep themselves out of that relegation bracket, but Astralis trying to push them down, not give them the opportunity.
Felt like there was something in the air, in the water today about the upset, something in the air around MNM, who'd had so many close calls across the split, but honestly, this game has been not close at all, as Michigu steps forward to pick up an axe and takes half his HP bar in trade almost.
You can see that Kiba is still taking damage, and again, you overcommit into MNM. Maybe there's a chance, maybe the spinning axes, maybe the Cassiopeia can do enough work. I mean, even a few items on Cassiopeia, even if they're behind the curve, can do something.
They're going to try and make this one happen. Kiba goes golden, stays alive, and the turnaround means that Shredder dies again. Caleb looking for the flag, though. Maybe this could be something, but Senkuk's already removes the jungler. Lee Sin is blinded by death. Michigu trying to trade out with a Mega Knight. I don't think he wins that one. Chrisberg just about getting out alive as well, and Astralis win this one with their wallets because they are mighty and full of about 30,000 tons of gold. They'll move in to secure themselves a 9th win in the summer split.
Come down like a neutron star. MNM not ready to withstand that. MNM not able to keep pace, sitting down at that second to last spot.
Nothing to be done, and MNM, having witnessed Nariki winning the game before, are going to be sort of wiping sweat off their brow. Relegation